meeting is what mine's saying.
Me too.
Okay. Mine's not.
Oh, my, there's 7 people coming in now.
Video. Hit video.
Okay, everybody,
Okay.
how we doing?
Doing good, ma'am.
Good. Let me get a little bit more sound going on here. There we go. All right. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for Story Arc. If you will remember to mute your microphones, mute your computers, so we do not get background noise from everybody, we would appreciate that. It kind of helps with all of the echo and the background noise that we hear. Thumbs up if everybody can hear me okay. Perfect. If this is your first time joining us, we are very happy to have you. I am Wendy Haggerton. I am your technology coach. I kind of run behind the scenes. You'll see me now, you'll see me at the end. That's about it. They're all laughing at me. If you will go to your chat box, it is the bottom of your screen. It says chat. If you will open that up and give us your first and last name and what school you are from, we would appreciate that. Just so we kind of get an idea of who all is here. Again, if you're just now joining us, if you will mute your microphone, we would appreciate that so we don't get a lot of background noise. And sign in on the chat so we know who you are. Before we begin, the other coaches are going to introduce themselves and then we will get started.
I got it. Hello, my name is Angela Baeza. I am one of your reading and instructional coaches. Sorry, used to be reading coaches. Instructional coaches. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Carrie Pruitt, and I'm one of your instructional coaches. And again, thank you for being here this afternoon. We appreciate y'all.
Hello, Kathy Klepper. Glad to have you with us. Glad you're back. You want to come up, Scott?
Get off Wendy's.
Okay.
I'll be Wendy's here today.
Hi everyone, I'm Skylar Kirkpatrick. I'm going to be an instructional coach starting next year.
All right. So, like I said, we're super glad you're with us. It makes us happy that you come back. So this morning we talked about collaborative conversations and anchor charts, and we have to tell you, so when we finished our Zoom, we were bragging on y'all. Your answers were spot on, amazing. We know for a fact that you're using the non-negotiables because we see you using them in the classroom. So thank you very, very much. And if you ever need help with any of the non-negotiables, reach out to the coaches because they are super, super happy to jump in and help you. So brief history, real quick. So this afternoon, we're going to talk about the story arc, and we'll get to that here in just a bit. Brief history, in case you didn't participate this morning. In 2017, our district looked at John Hattie's meta-analysis, and basically a meta-analysis is just an analysis of hundreds of studies, because sometimes you can conduct a study and it can prove a certain strategy when really it's the way you can have maybe conducted the study. But when you look at hundreds of studies, then you know what really works, what consistently yields high benefits for kiddos. And that's what our district was wanting to find out. So if you'll look at your screen, the practices that the Hobbs schools went with were class discussion, concept mapping, and metacognitive strategies. So for class discussion, the practice that the Hobbs schools chose was collaborative conversation. Like I said, we talked about that this morning, and that's just allowing kids to learn from one another. And it's just smart teaching. At the end of the day, it's what we need to do. The next one was concept mapping, and the Hobbs schools chose anchor charts. And that allows us to organize our thoughts, and that is important both for children and for teachers. And then the third one is metacognitive strategies, and we went with the story arc, which is what we're going to talk about today. And the story arc makes us, metacognitive strategies make us think about our thinking, which is exactly what the story arc does. It slows us down, and that's what we as teachers need to do with our kiddos. When you're talking about reading, we want to slow down reading to speed up comprehension, and that's exactly what the story arc does. If you look at the top of this slide, it says visible learning. all these 3 district non-negotiables, and they're K through 12, are all visible learning. Your learning, whatever's going on in your classroom, is visible to anyone who walks in. It's visible to students, it's visible to teachers, it's visible to your principals, it's visible to your parents, it's visible to central office. Central office walks in your classroom, they absolutely can look around and realize exactly what you're doing with your kiddos. And that's important, because if you're doing great things, it's important that people know what you're doing.
Leaving
So
your breadcrumbs. Like Carrie
exactly
said.
like Carrie said today, the breadcrumbs. Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide. All right, so the story arc academic vocabulary includes story elements, and these are the story elements. So if you'll look, you'll see exposition, and included within the exposition are your characters, your setting, and your conflict. It's actually conflict, but a lot of times we want to provide a synonym. We want to help kiddos understand it's the problem, because sometimes kids hear conflict and they're not quite sure. So rising action, that's what happens after the conflict. And I'm going to model a story arc for you. So hopefully I can tell you these things. Hopefully I'm going to show you these things here in just a minute. And then we have the climax, and that's the turning point. That's when the mood in some stories goes maybe from here to here, or maybe it goes from here to here. So we're going to look at that today. And then you have the falling action. That's what happens after your climax. And then the resolution. That's how the story ends. So these are the story elements, and kids do need to be familiar, and they need to use the academic terms. All right, we'll look at our next slide. All right, so something super duper important. I really feel like I've had people say, so can you use a story arc on anything? No, absolutely, big no. The story arc, it's a narrative story arc. It can only be used with the narratives. And so basically a narrative, it can be fiction or nonfiction, either one's fine, but it's a text that tells a story. And so that's very, very important. So really, really be cognizant of that. I would also encourage you, before you do a story arc with your kiddos, read the text. Make sure it lends itself well, because sometimes there'll be a lot of rising action, not much falling. Sometimes it'll be a cliffhanger. You want to make sure that when you're modeling story arcs, especially initially for your kiddos, that you pick a text or a story that lends itself well to the story arc. It has definite characters, definite setting, definite conflict, climax, and so forth. So there's some stories that lend themselves beautifully, and then some that are great to read, but maybe they don't lend themselves as well. So just be cognizant of that if you can. It does great things for comprehension. And so I hope you'll see that today. I hope you'll be aware of that. And that's our job as teachers. We don't want kids wasting their time or ours. We want, when they read, we want to make sure they understand what they're reading. So that's huge. And then look, trains readers to anticipate story elements. This is my most favorite part. So I know as a teacher, we read, my kiddos read, they did great things, but I don't know that I ever was able to teach them to anticipate what they needed to be looking for in a narrative story. And so since we've been coaches, we've been able to model a lot of these lessons, and it's amazing what you can do with kiddos, because when you anticipate something, your awareness is heightened. You pay better attention. It's just smarter teaching on our part. So I feel like, or we feel like, that modeling the story arc is super important. You want to do it over and over and over so that kids eventually can do it themselves. Yeah. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. So like I said, we want to do great things with comprehension. We want to train them to anticipate the story elements. It can also be used to improve narrative writing. And I know when we first rolled this out in the district, there were teachers that would say to us that they use the story arc in writing classes. Like when they were, several of them actually were from Texas, and they talked about that it was basically used as an outline. And so they used it to create a narrative piece. So that's something that if you get your kids really familiar with being able to use the story arc, then they themselves can create, they can write a narrative using it as an outline and get them started. And it provides a visual. And I don't care who you are, I think everybody does better with a little visual. So, and research says, guys, and I know I already said it once, but I really, really, really believe this with everything. Good readers slow down their reading to speed up their comprehension. And so I don't know about y'all, but we've all read things, and at the end we don't remember what we've read because we were going so stinking fast. And sometimes our kids even like to be the first ones finished because they feel like that makes them smarter. But when you have them slow down and you have them do a story arc, it really, really heightens comprehension and helps them to understand what they're reading. So, so I'm going to model this lesson, Spaghetti and Hot Dog Bun. It's one of our most favorite stories. We absolutely love it. We think it would be great for the beginning of the year. I think you'll love it. It's really, really precious. So Like I said, you might want to try at the beginning of the year. So, all righty, here we go.
Yep, yep, good. Good right there.
All good? Everybody can see? Okay, give me thumbs up with your hands because I can see your little faces. Can you guys see okay? Yeah? All right.
Oh, thumbs up.
All right. Yeah.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Good job. Okay. All right. So here we go. All righty. So I have our coaches with us and I'm going to pretend like they're my kiddos.
Yes.
So
We're your student.
yeah. So if I sound a little goofy or calling boys and girls, I'm sorry. It is what it is. So here we go. All right. So boys and girls, today we're going to make a story arc. We're going to use a story arc to help us with our comprehension so we don't forget what's important in this story. When we look up here, we can see a story arc. Have any of you ever had a teacher that's used a story arc with you before? No?
Looks
Have
like
you
a
ever?
roller coaster.
It does look like a roller coaster.
roller coaster.
Absolutely, it looks like a roller coaster. Okay, so it does kind of look like a roller coaster. Well, this is what we're going to use to plot what happens, our story elements in the story Spaghetti and a Hot Dog Bun. So I went ahead and I wrote Spaghetti and a Hot Dog Bun on our anchor chart. Think I did okay? It looks all right,
Well,
right?
Miss Clever, you've told us we need to do something to that title.
That's right. You're exactly right. Okay, so guys, so teachers, when we are modeling lessons for kiddos, we want to make sure that we teach them, we embed good teaching strategies, we embed skills, we embed things that we want them to know from the beginning. Guys, when you write a book title, what do you do to it? Underline it. Absolutely. So when I teach kiddos, I ask them, so what is this? What is this, guys? What is this? Tell me. It's a book. What do you do to a book title? Anybody know? You think? All right. Everybody give it with me. Ready? Say book. Everybody take your hand. Even I'm watching you kiddos' little faces on the screen. Everybody give it to me. Ready? Book.
Book.
Excellent. So when you write a book title, you absolutely want to make sure that you underline. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to underline. So we are going to underline the words Spaghetti and a Hot Dog Bun, because again, like we said, it is a book title and we want to make sure that if we were writing, say, a summary and we were referring to Spaghetti and a Hot Dog Bun, maybe our teacher didn't realize what it was. So we want to make sure that we have it underlined so they realize that is a book title. Okay. So if you were working with little people, you might want to say something like, okay, boys and girls, so what is this called in the book? What's it called, Ms. Pruitt, since you're a kindergarten teacher? What's this called?
Front cover.
Front cover. Absolutely. What's this called, Ms. Pruitt?
Front cover.
Absolutely. And what's this called?
Fine.
Absolutely. So you might want to work on book sense if you're working with little people. Obviously, if you're secondary, that would be insulting. So make sure to All right. So here we go. We're going to get started. We wrote Spaghetti and Hot Dog Bun. That's our title. So guys, when I look at the title of my book, I see Maria Dismondy. Who do you think Maria Dismondy might be?
Is she that kid on the book?
That's a great question, Wendy. I love that. But actually, she's not the kid on the book, but she's very, very important. Who do you think Maria Dismondy might be? Her name's right here on the front cover. What do you think?
She write the book?
Did she write the book? Absolutely. Maria Dismondy wrote the book. But guys, we're super smart. We don't use write the book term, do we? What term do we use?
Author.
Author. Excellent. So we know Maria Dismondy is the author. All right. Help me out. Underneath Maria Dismondy, I see illustrations by Kim Shaw. So who's Kim Shaw?
She drew pictures.
Good job. So she is the
Illustrator.
illustrator. Excellent. So she drew these beautiful, beautiful pictures. So we know that every narrative is going to have an author. Sometimes the author is even the narrator. I mean, the illustrator. But in this sense, the author is not. We have a separate illustrator. All right. You ready for one of the best stories ever? You're going to love this. All right. So here we go. When we get started reading a text, there are some things that the author always exposes us to. Does anyone know what those things might be? Getting ready to open my text. I'm super, super excited. And there's some things. There's three things. Three things. You guys give me three. Everybody show me three fingers. Three things. Absolutely. There's three things that the author always, always exposes his or her readers to. Does anybody know what those things might be? Characters. How many of you agree that the author is always going to expose his or her reader to characters? All right. So let's go ahead and write characters. characters.
People in the story.
People in the story. What else could they be?
Animals.
Animals in the story. So they could be people, they could be animals, absolutely in the story. So we want to make sure that a reader, when a reader opens up a text, we want to make sure that they're anticipating when's the author going to introduce me to the characters, okay? Spot on. Okay, so we know the author's going to introduce his or her readers to the characters. What else is the author going to introduce his or her readers to? There's 3 things. You've gotten 1. We've got 2 more.
Setting.
Setting. Excellent. All right. So what is the setting? Help me out. What's the setting?
Where are the characters or where the story's taking place?
Where the story takes place. Very, very good. So the author's introduces us to the characters. Now the author's going to introduce us to the setting. They don't have to happen in that order, but they are always introduced at the beginning. And then there's one more thing. What's the, and generally the third thing, very rarely ever first or second. What's generally the third thing that the author is going to introduce his or her readers to? The problem, absolutely. Because if there's no problem and there's nothing happening, you're not going to want to read that story. It's going to be boring. Yeah. So we are going to write problem. The author introduces his or her readers to the problem. Now, because you guys are super smart, and I know you are because you're my kids. No, I'm just kidding. Because you're super smart, I want you to realize that problem is fine. It's fine to say problem. Actually, there's a more academic word. And because we want to get smarter, every single day we're going to use that academic word. Does anybody know what the academic word is?
Solution.
No. Conflict.
There it
You
is.
guys, super smart. And so I'm going to give you a little hint. So conflict, when you're listening to a story, conflict is the part where your heart goes, like it just doesn't feel right. Like you're rocking along, you're reading the text, you're reading your narrative, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, wait, that wasn't good. And when you hear that, when you feel like, whoa, it stopped you, that's when you know you just read the conflict. So I'm going to read this narrative to you, Spaghetti and a Hot Dog Bun. And I want you to listen very, very carefully. And I want you to help me identify the
Characters.
the
Setting.
and the
Conflict.
Okay, so I'm going to read a page and then I'm going to stop. And if you can identify any of those, then we'll write them on our anchor chart. Okay? Everybody's good to go?
Yep.
All right, here we go. Sorry, girl.
I gotcha.
All right, so here we go. The delicious smell of breakfast filled the air as Lucy's grandpa handed her a plate. Lucy smeared ketchup on her toast. She turned to her grandpa and said, Papa Gino, Harriet said she's never heard of ketchup on her toast. Her family uses butter and jelly. Okay, let's stop for just a minute. Did we hear any of these 3 things that we're listening for? Any of these 3 story elements? Characters, okay. We heard Lucy. And it's very, very important when you're doing writing story art, making a story, that you use, obviously names are proper nouns. Make sure if you're going to write Lucy's name, you write it with a capital letter because kids see that and it needs to always be replicated correctly. Lucy, excellent.
Grandpa.
And
he
okay.
said,
Grandpa's amazing. Do you remember what Grandpa's name was? Oh, this is kind of tough. Page 1, I'm already asking you these questions. Come on. Lucy's grandpa, Papa Gino. Excellent. Good job. All right, so then we have Papa Gino.
Yes. Annie answered.
Excellent. So we have Lucy and we have Papa Gino. You guys are good. All right, here we go. It's okay. Not everyone likes the same thing, Lucy. It doesn't mean one person is right or wrong. We're all different. What a boring world it would be if we were all exactly alike. Do you remember what's really important? Papa Gino asked. Yes, Papa. Even if we are different from others on the outside, we all have a heart with feelings on the inside. That's my girl. Remember, when you treat others with love and kindness, you are doing the right thing, Papa Gino replied. Okay, let's stop for just a second. Anything? Do we see anything that we can add to our story arc? The setting. What do you think the setting is in our story?
Well, she's getting on a bus, so maybe she's going to school.
All right, you made a great inference right there. We see the school bus. Where we see a school bus, we can assume the students are going where?
To
To
school.
school, absolutely. So we can add school to our setting. Excellent. Good job, Angela. All right, here we go. On the school bus, Lucy and her friend Harriet pulled out some paper and crayons. Sitting across from them was Ralph. As usual, Ralph sat alone. Staring out the window, he looked over at them and rolled his eyes. Okay, now stop for a minute. As we're listening to this story, did anybody feel a little bit of, ooh?
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think?
Ralph's not very nice.
Ralph's not very nice. Thank you, Wendy. That's is that a problem? When a kid's not nice to you, is that a
Yes.
problem for you?
Yes.
Absolutely. So have we figured out the conflict or the problem?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Ralph, what did Ralph do? Show me what Ralph did, guys. Rolled his eyes. When someone rolls their eyes at you, how does that make you feel?
No.
Does that make you feel thumbs up or does that make you feel thumbs down?
Thumbs down.
Thumbs down.
Ah, so if you'd like to on your computer, feel free to give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. How do you feel? How would you feel if someone rolled their eyes at
We're
you?
seeing thumbs down.
Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Yeah, thumbs down.
Poopy.
Ah,
Stephanie.
Ralph rolled his eyes. Excellent. All right. Was there anything else? Did you hear any other names? We have Lucy. We have Papagino. Were there any other characters? Harriet. Excellent. And were there any others?
Ralph.
Ah, you got it. And what do we know about names of people? What kind of nouns are they? Proper nouns. And what do you do to proper nouns?
give it a capital.
Give it a capital. Excellent. So let's review real quickly. Who are our characters so far in our story?
Ralph,
Harriet,
Lucy, Papagino.
Excellent. Where's our story taking place?
School.
At a school. And what was our conflict or our problem?
Ralph
Ralph's rolling his eyes.
He is not nice. He is rolling his eyes. Okay, here we go. In the classroom, Lucy sat down near the teacher. Ralph carelessly hurried over and tripped on Lucy's foot. Before long, he was glaring at her. Glare at me, boys and girls. You think that makes me feel thumbs up or thumbs down? Big thumbs down. Ralph whispered, "Oof, I can't see the book with this poodle in front of me." Lucy could hear him giggling behind her. Oh no, why did it have to be me, she wondered. Thumbs up or thumbs down? During lunch, Harriet shouted one of her silly jokes over the other children's voices. As the girls ate, their bellies shook with laughter. Across the table, Ralph hollered, "Yuck! That's the disgusting smell! Who ever heard of eating spaghetti in a hot dog bun?" Oh, guys, how are we feeling? Thumbs up? Thumbs down? You think we want to add that to our story arc?
Yeah.
Ralph, he made fun of Lucy's lunch, didn't he?
Yeah.
Is that a good thing or not a good thing?
He's rude.
He is rude.
Rude Ralph.
Rude Ralph.
Right. Definitely. All right, here we go. Tony and the other children at the table turned away from Ralph, shaking their heads. Ralph continued, "Poor little Lucy with her hair so poofy." Tears filled Lucy's eyes, and she began to cry. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Thumbs down. On the way home, Lucy thought about what had happened. Maybe Ralph is mean to me because he thinks being different is bad. I wish he would stop teasing me. Slowly,
Lucy stepped off the bus. How was your day? Papagino asked. Fine, she mumbled. Papa reached over and pulled a crayon out of her hair. How did this happen? He asked. Lucy didn't say a word. That night, as Papagino tucked Lucy into bed, he asked, "Is everything all right at school?" Lucy rolled over. He sat down and whispered, "Always remember, if something's not right, we can work on fixing it together." It's not that easy, thought Lucy. How do I stop Ralph from teasing me? How can he have a heart and be so mean? Lucy had a hard time falling asleep, worrying about what was going to happen tomorrow. The following day, Lucy was surprised to find Ralph leaving her alone. Until Lucy took the bag that Ralph handed her. Inside were dog bones with a note that read, "Lucy, Lucy eats stinky food that puts us all in a big, bad mood. Lucy, Lucy, hair shaped like a cone. Here's a treat for you, a yummy dog bone."
Oh, poor Lucy.
Guys, thumbs up or thumbs
Thumbs
down?
down.
Thumbs down.
I think we should add that to our story.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, do you think giving someone a dog bone is a kind thing?
No.
No, not at all. The beating of Lucy's heart was so loud, she knew everyone around her could hear it. "Stop! It hurts my feelings when you do that, Ralph," Lucy said. "Please stop." Ralph turned and walked away. It was recess time, and Lucy played alone. She didn't want to tell her teacher about Ralph. She was afraid of being a tattletale. Lucy wished Papagino was there to help. What should I do? She asked herself over and over. The bell rang as recess ended. "Help!" cried a child off in the distance. Tony yelled, "Ralph got himself stuck on the top of the monkey bars. It's the funniest thing I've ever seen." Thumbs up or thumbs down? Thumbs down. We don't want anybody to be stuck on the top of the monkey bars, do we? Think we should add that to our story? Or?
Yes.
Okay. This is my chance. I'll go tell Ralph how mean he really is. M-E-A-N, mean. Lucy stomped off towards the monkey bars. When she reached Ralph, Lucy paused. She looked him in the eye and said, "What you did was so mean." Standing before Ralph, Lucy could hear her papa's words. Ralph did have a heart with feelings. In that moment, Lucy decided what she would do. She saw tears in Ralph's eyes. He hesitated to move and whispered, "I'm scared." Lucy reached out and said, "Here, take my hand." And she helped him down. Boys and girls, is that a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
Thumbs
up.
Big thumbs up.
Good job, Lucy.
Yay, Lucy.
So do we want to add that to our story?
Yes.
So we're going to add that right here. We'll put a big X at the top. Because when the mood in our story changes from this to this, or the other way around, we know that is the climax of the story. So we know that Lucy, what do we want to say? Help me, Lucy. Helped Ralph.
Down.
Helped Ralph.
Ralph.
Lucy helped Ralph down. Yeah. All right. Now I want to show you something. When you're reading a narrative and your feelings in your heart go from this to this or vice versa, we know that is the climax. Something is very important. The mood in our story just changed. What has our mood been so far in the story? Sad. When we got to the climax, what happened to our mood?
Happy.
Happy.
Felt good.
Happy. And that's when you know you have arrived at the climax in your story. The two walked back to the classroom without saying a word. As the bus pulled up to Lucy's stop, Ralph reached over and handed her a picture. Lucy was amazed with what she saw. "Thanks," she muttered. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Big
up.
thumbs up. So what did Ralph do? What did Ralph just do, guys? What did he give Lucy?
A note.
A note.
With a picture on it.
Yes. When you draw someone a picture, does that mean you're trying to be kind?
Yeah.
Absolutely. After she got off the bus, Lucy smiled and said, "Papa, there's this boy, Ralph, who was really, really mean to me. Today, he was in trouble, and I helped him." Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Thumbs up.
Okay, good job. Papa Gino hugged Lucy and replied, "That took a lot of courage. It wasn't the easiest thing to do. You chose to treat others the way you wanted to be treated. I am so proud of you, Lucy." Oh, thumbs up
Thumbs up.
or thumbs down? All right, you want to add it to our story? Art?
Yes.
Of course. Papa Gino is what, guys?
Super proud.
Very proud of Lucy. As they walked home, she asked him what was for dinner. When Papa Gino said spaghetti, Lucy knew immediately what she would have for lunch the next day. Her favorite sandwich is what, guys? Spaghetti in a hot dog bun. All right, good job. All right, so boys and girls, let's look up here at our story arc. Let's look at what we've done. So we just read a great story about Lucy. How many of you think you would have done what Lucy did? Nobody? No hands raised.
I would.
You would have let Ralph stay up on the top of the monkey bars. Yeah. Okay. So that they would have
We would have
all
helped
you would have
him.
all helped him. Absolutely. Very, very good. Okay. No, we actually have one coach. This is no. She would not have helped Ralph. She would have.
Okay, I'm kidding.
She
I would
she absolutely would have helped Ralph. Absolutely. So let's look at our story arc. In the very beginning of our story arc, what did we identify? What were the story elements? Help me.
Character, setting, and conflict.
Absolutely. It's so very important that you do that at the beginning. And then once we got to our conflict, and what was our conflict again? Remind me, class, what was our conflict?
Ralph.
Ralph, what did he do? Show me. Don't tell me. Show me. Absolutely. he rolled his eyes. How did that make us feel in our hearts?
Hurt.
Made us feel kind of hurt. Made us feel sad.
Mhm.
Rolling your eyes is never okay for anyone to do. So once we got to the conflict, we knew that the rising action was ready to begin. And then after Ralph rolled his eyes, what happened next? What happened, guys?
He made
Made
fun of
fun of
Lucy's
Lucy.
lunch.
He made fun of Lucy's lunch, and then what
Gave
happened?
her Lucy dog
He
bone.
gave her a dog bone, and then
He got stuck.
he got stuck on the monkey bars. And all those things you were reading, you were thinking, no more, no more. And it just kept happening. And that is what we call our rising action. So we'll go ahead and write that in. And then we got to the what, boys and girls?
The mood.
The
climax.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
All of a sudden, when you're reading a narrative and it goes from this to this or this to this, you realize that is actually the climax. That is the part where we go, whoa, whoa, whoa. The story is totally taking a change because our mood went from sad to happy. So that's how you always identify the climax. So when you're reading a text, boys and girls, and you get to the part where you're feeling maybe encouraged because things have changed, they're not so sad, they're showing some hope. That is the climax of the story. And then after our climax, after Lucy went the extra mile and gave Ralph her hand, right? Then what happened, guys? What happened? Tell us.
Started feeling good. You
Then you started feeling good. Then it's like you're kind of, oh, now's time for the falling action. And that's when the story is beginning to get to the end. Okay, so what happened? We had our change of mood. We went from here to here. And then what happened? What did Ralph do?
Drew a picture.
He drew a picture. And so as you're reading the text in your heart, did you feel a little bit like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, okay. You're thinking Ralph's not such a bad guy.
liked him.
Yeah, Wendy decides, okay. Yeah, Ralph, I kind of like you. Absolutely. And then what happened at the end?
Papa Gino was so
very
proud.
Papa Gino was so proud. So how did our story end up, guys?
Thumbs up.
Big time thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Okay, very,
And I
very.
bet they're friends now.
You know what, and we all know this, boys and girls, we know that sometimes when kids aren't kind, it's just because maybe they're feeling a little bit insecure. So if we show them kindness, then what happens?
They become kind.
They become very, very kind. And so what we know at the end of the story is called the resolution because the story is resolved. When you look back over here, we were talking about the characters, the setting, and the conflict. That part of the story is called the exposition. And the reason it's called the exposition is because the author is what? Exposing his or her readers to three very important things that are, anytime you read a narrative, you're always going to be exposed to the
Characters.
to the
Setting,
and to
conflict.
the very, very good. Always, always, always. And that's the exposition. And that's such a very, very, very important part. And that sets the stage for the
Rising action.
and then when all of a sudden it changes, the thumbs change, what is that? The
Climax, the
The
mood.
climax, the mood changes, it's the climax, and then we get to the
Falling action.
which is the
Resolution.
all right. So boys and girls, how many of you enjoyed the story?
Yes.
Yes, did you love the story? So if that happens to you and you're on the playground
Yeah.
and somebody needs help, even if it's somebody who hasn't been kind to you, are you going to be kind?
It's always be kind. It's always good to be
It's
kind.
always, always good to be kind. Okay, very, very good. Thank you so much. Okay. Okay. All right. So when you were watching the story arc, were you think about if you're a student? Think about, you can go to the front of your classroom, you can absolutely sit down and just pull out a great narrative and you can just start reading it to your kiddos and they're hanging on to the words and they're listening. But do you think they're remembering everything the way they remember when you do a story arc? No. They could have told you Ralph was mean, but they couldn't have told you maybe the specific things Ralph did. He rolled his eyes. He gave her a bag of dog bones. He made fun of her food in the cafeteria. The way you can help with remembering those kind of things is slow down reading to speed up
Comprehension.
and when you create a story arc with your students, that is exactly what you do. You slow down the reading so that the little details that are in the narrative, you remember them. And that is extremely important. So, and that's a whole job. That's, like I said, that's what we want to do. We want to slow down our reading to speed up comprehension. So let's look at the additional ideas real quickly.
at the beginning, when you do a story arc, you create a story arc with your kiddos, sometimes like you may want to just write the events, like before you've read that, you read the text yourself, of course, but then before you read it to your kiddos, you may want to go in and just write different events. Maybe some of the ones like we did on the anchor chart, you'll write them on a little sticky note, and the kids are listening, and you tell them, okay, I'm going to read this text to you, and I want you to listen really, really, really well. And at the end, I'm going to pick some kiddos who look like they're great listeners, and I'm going to give you a sticky note, and you have to go put it up on the story arc. At that point, like I said, they have to understand the story elements, have to understand, where would that go? Ooh, that was when it went from here to here, so that must be, you know, the climax. Or that was when the problem started, that must be the conflict. Or that was a name. Okay, if it's a name, if it's a person's name, we know it's going to be a
Character.
If it's a place, we know it's going to be a
Setting.
very, very, very good. Okay, so that's really important. You just want kids to become familiar with the story elements, because if they are, their comprehension level is going to increase greatly. Let's see, we put another idea, write your favorite part on a sticky note. That's always a lot of fun to tell the kiddos, okay, I'm going to read this amazing, amazing narrative to you, and I want you to listen, and I'm giving you a sticky note. And when you're finished, when I'm finished reading, I'm going to give you time to write your favorite part. Then I'm going to let you come put it on the story arc. Again, the beauty in that, first of all, you encourage kids to listen. Second of all, if they can place it correctly, then they have a great understanding of what the story arc represents. If they take a sticky note with a person's name on it and they put it maybe in the resolution, then obviously they don't have that quite figured out. So you have to make sure that you've defined all the story elements. They understand what each of them represents. And then, like I said, that's just a really fun thing to have them participate in. And when you tell them, and I only have 5 sticky notes, so I'm going to be watching for the 5 kiddos that are paying attention beautifully. Guess what happens to the kiddos?
They all
pay attention. It's so amazing. All right, and kind of like what we did, and I was trying to kind of go a little bit quicker, but when you do a story arc, you can use it to retell the story. So if I would have just read this to you and I said, okay, let's talk about the story, and had y'all retell, chances are you would have left off a lot of the specific things maybe that are written down as far as the rising action or the falling action. So it is great after you've created a story arc with your kiddos, then you let them retell, and they feel so smart because you've empowered them to feel smart. You've set them up for success because of this quote anchor chart that is a story arc.
And it pushes, I was just thinking as you're saying that, like as a first grade teacher, I remember just teaching beginning, middle, and end. But how much more detail and information they can provide doing this.
Exactly. This breaks it down. Beginning, middle, and end is great. There's nothing wrong with that. But if that's what you're doing, that's fine. But try this because this breaks it down into smaller chunks. So it's like it makes more visual sense to the kiddos. So yeah, I think that is an absolute great idea. If you want your kiddos to retell, like I said, you would want them to go through and retell everything that was on the story arc. And that's super fun for them. Boys and girls, sorry. Well, y'all. Yeah. Okay, so say I was going to read this to you today, and then tomorrow we were going to, using this text, we were going to have some kind of other activity. Then you could begin the next day going to your story arc and having the kids retell it, like I said, day later. It's a great reminder of everything that they read about. So it's awesome when it comes to retell. If you want your children to use that to summarize, when they summarize, then they use the exposition. What are the 3 parts of the exposition, guys? What are they?
Character, setting, conflict.
Excellent. So you want to use the exposition. What else would we want to use if we're going to summarize? We're going to use the climax, and then we're going to use the
resolution.
Excellent. And so that would be if you asked your kiddos to write a summary of this narrative, then you would expect that they would include those 3 parts. Does that make sense? Is that good? For upper grade teachers, if you are reading a chapter book, well, this is really cool. The lady that we learned some of this from, Miss Judy from Houston, she said that if you're using a chapter book, then each chapter would have its individual story arc. So you really can use this, even if you're in the upper grades reading chapter books, you can have a story arc. You can create a story arc for each chapter. So that makes it fun. Then you just put it, after you're finished with chapter 1, you put a blank page up and you do chapter 2. And it really is, like I said, it just heightens kids' awareness. So they're really paying attention for new characters maybe that are brought in that chapter, or a different setting, maybe some other conflicts. So it really does heighten kids' awareness, and it really does help them to pay attention. There's endless opportunities of what you can do with the story arc. The beauty is, if you do it enough, and I think it's in our opinions, it's a really great idea to do this over and over and over, so that your children, as you're reading a narrative to them, in their mind, they're visualizing the story arc. They're visualizing the characters, the setting. In their mind, they're making that visual. And if you, what do we say on Monday? Model, model, model. If you model this over and over and over, then that's
And
exactly
the
what
academic vocabulary they're going to
Right.
be able to use when they learn this.
The
That's
acad-
impressive. And
Oh,
I've seen it with kinder teachers.
We've
tailor
seen
it.
kinder teachers say, oh, that was the exposition. That was the resolution. You're like, what? Anyway, so yes, absolutely. When you expose kiddos to this vocabulary, they make it theirs.
Yeah.
And that's what we want it to do. But we just know that kids at the end of the day, they want to open up a text, start at the beginning, read to the end, they're finished. And so we want to give them permission to slow down. And when we do things like the story arc, we give them permission. Plus, like we talked about earlier, it's great to use it for a narrative writing. If, say, you're an upper grade teacher, I mean, you're just not a baby teacher like Ms. Carey with kindergartners, say, you tell them, okay, you're going to write a narrative, and I want you to start with the story arc. And so they visually draw that story arc, and they write in their characters and their setting and their conflict, and they write in the events. And they can even just start off with the exposition, the climax, and the resolution, and then turn that into you. You look at it, you say, you're on. This is great. Keep going. Give it back to them, and then they include or they add the rising action and the falling action. So
And I remember kind of doing some research on it, and I read that many of when you watch movies,
right,
a lot of these movie writers use this formula to write out movies because they when you watch a movie, you have all these parts of the movie. So I mean, just even, and I know I've seen them on YouTube. There's some even Disney clips that explain these parts of the
story.
arc. So I've seen that.
It's cool. The more you can expose kids in the story arc, the more they look for the story elements when they read. The more they listen for the story elements when they're watching a movie. It just is embedded in them, and I think it definitely does great things for comprehension. Because I don't care how old you are, you're going to be reading or you're going to be going to the movie, and it's just cool to think, that was the climax, or that was the conflict, or those are the main characters. So I think that's almost it. We're going to play a dice game in just a second. But what I'd like you to do, would you unmute yourself, unchat yourself. That's what I don't want you to do is unchat. I want you to chat. Would you unmute yourself, and would you share ways that maybe you've used a story arc and that you've seen some success? In writing, Crystal Ramirez says that she's used it in writing. You don't have to type. You can just say it. It's okay.
Yeah, you can unmute and talk.
My partner
I can't hear her.
can you hear me now?
Heather, unmute. Yeah, I can. Wait. Hold on. She's talking, but I can't hear her.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Uh-oh. Hold on, Miss Heather. We want to hear you. I know, but we want to hear you because I know you have great things to share. It does take time, but it's so cool when we as teachers give kids permission to slow it down when it comes to the reading.
Okay, I have everybody unmuted, so don't start. Oh, I'm not unmuted. I have everybody unmuted, so don't start making a lot of noise because we want to be able to hear everybody. So Heather, go. What were you saying?
My partner did a great thing where she organized a bunch of sentence frames to go along with the story arc.
Okay.
Did that work?
Can you hear me? Mine.
Okay. So my partner came up with some story frames to go along with the story arc, and we mapped that out for the kids to just practice writing a 7-sentence summary for at the beginning of the year for homework with AR stories, and modeled it a lot as well. But we could do things like I think, if this happens with the conflict, so this happened at the climax, then, this happened at the resolution. But we began each part, is how we had it broken down into 7 parts. And then the kids had 7 sentences to write. I think starting with, today I read such and such by so-and-so, period. The setting is, and then they say it, and the characters are, and they say it, and just very formulaic to get through the different parts. So anyways, it worked well for us from what she constructed.
Excellent.
Yay, thank you for sharing
Nice.
that.
Heather, that is awesome. And that's a scaffold that sets the kids up for success. So and that's the kind of thing we want to do. We want you to use the story arc as much as you can, and then we want you to bring in those scaffolds that set the kids up to be successful, like what Heather just shared that her coworker did. That's awesome. All right. Anyone else?
I use color coding for mine. So if the characters were one color, the setting was another color, our problem, conflict was a color, and then we tied the same color. Can you hear me?
Hold on, Miss Carol. We're trying to get our issues taken care of. Go ahead.
Okay. I was just saying how we color coded. The color coded, we had the characters one color, we had the setting another color, we did the problem one color, and and conflict, and wrote it in another color, but we tied it with the resolution so they could see problem, conflict with resolution, how that was the answer to that. And then we had climax for another color, and then they also did little pictures to help them remember.
Nice.
Excellent.
That is excellent. Those are wonderful ideas. I love that you color coded it because, like we keep saying, kids need visuals and they need scaffolds. So when you first start doing that, that's an excellent idea to bring them in and to make them different colors. I love that idea. That's wonderful. And then so that they can see the different parts, the different story elements. That's awesome. Okay, anybody else? Who else has used the story arc that feels like they've experienced some success with it?
Kathy, we do a storyboard when we do our story arc, and we do it with the story. And the first block is just like a basic story arc and labeled, and then each block they explain everything that went in that section as we read our story. And they do it collaborative too. They will come up with the answers and tell me what to write on the board. I write it on the board, then they copy it on their paper. So.
Absolutely. And I was just, like I said, trying to show you kind of a snippet just to get you maybe started as a teacher if you haven't experienced using the story arc. But that is wonderful. Then to let the kids collaborate, to let them come up with maybe what you're going to put, the different events that are happening in the story arc. Let them, as they're listening, they share them with you, Okay.
Miss Elizabeth, pictures is a good idea for visuals, and I have heard that with some of the kindergarten teachers before, using pictures.
Cool. Using pictures as far as like for character setting, those kinds of things. Excellent. And we have seen this. We have seen teachers that have made kind of a story arc template, and they've laminated it, and then that works perfect as far as going in with your sticky note and putting on the different, the different things as they happen, the different events as they happen, where they belong on the story arc. And the thing is, you want your kids to feel like at the end of creating a story arc, they know a whole lot about if they hadn't done the story arc. Because like I said, when we sit down to read something, we go fast, and when we slow it down, we use the story arc, then they can be very successful. I don't know if I was muted, but
I fixed
it. Fixed it. Okay, no big deal. So like I said, laminating a story arc just to use it with your kiddos over and over and again. Can we use the story arc with any piece of text?
No.
No, please don't, because that is not what this is for. This is for a narrative text. You want to make sure that you read the text prior to reading it. If you're just going to read a story to your kiddos, that's fine. But if you want to have a story arc to accompany it, to show them just how much they can remember from their narrative text, then you definitely want to make sure that you've read it ahead of time and that it does fit the story arc formula. And it fits it nicely at the beginning when you're modeling it. So, any questions? No? Okay, we ready to play the dice game?
Yes.
All right.
You're muted.
Okay. All right, we'll start the dice game. Am I talking? Yeah. And I read Sylvia's. That's a great idea. Providing hand motions for each
Yes.
area. Like if you're in an exposition, she said in the climax, they kind of, when they raise their hand. And so, yeah, I think you saw Kathy say, you feel it in your heart.
Okay, yes, and you know what,
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm so sorry, because when you said that, I thought, you know what, when you do this with real little kiddos, it's 10 times easier than doing it with pretend kiddos. Anyways, I'm not complaining about my team, I'm just saying they're pretend. But anyways, yeah, absolutely, you do the, when you get to the conflict, because it really, your heart really does for a split second go, wait, what's going on? And then I always teach the kids, this is the climax. Has an X in it, like the word climax. So when we get to the climax, you know, when they, like if I'm reading the story to them, they give me this when they hear it, because that's when the mood change. So yay for Sylvia saying that and sharing that. Thank you so much. Hand signals are good no matter what you're using. It's just a great, yes, it's very beneficial to kiddos.
A lot of great ideas.
Am I good? No, you're good. Yeah, so I just saw also emojis is another way of giving those visuals.
Yes.
Those kids like emojis, especially if they have cell phones.
Yeah,
They're
for
so
sure,
used to
for
using
sure.
those. So-
Yes, yes,
All
yes.
right, great. So we have question number 2, or we rolled the dice for number 2. So question number 2, what resources provide stories that will lend themselves to the story arc? So resources that we have in the district. If you want to, sorry, you can answer these questions in the chat. I'm just
There we
used
go.
to, okay.
Verona's just said narratives from Wonders. Sylvia says
Yes,
Wonders,
Mayon,
narrative.
AR.
Mhm, mhm.
Yes.
Absolutely. Wonders gives a lot of
Yes.
great.
And I know like in the
ones.
probably middle school, high school, I know some of you use your chapter books or
mhm,
novels.
mhm.
Your novels,
Mhm,
yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, library books, leveled readers,
Yay.
perfect.
AR books for sure.
Yes, and we did number 2, we're on number 5. How can utilization of the story arc help with narrative writing? I'll read that again. How can utilization of the story arc help with narrative writing? Sequencing.
Framework and visual.
Yes, sequencing, scaffolding. Students can plan their stories, give an outline, understand the components that are needed for writing, organizing thoughts, parts of a story, context clues. Perfect, great. A lot of good answers. Okay, we already had 2.
Oh my gosh.
2 and 5. 2
Two
and 5. 2 and 5.
Oh, wow.
3. Share one benefit for using the story arc. Engagement. Woo! Those are coming in.
Yeah, they are.
Good job, y'all.
Yeah.
Engagement, retail story, comprehension, slows down for
Oh, I like that
comprehension,
one.
identify elements in the story to promote comprehension, help students summarize, engaging. Good, yes. Number 1, all right, question number 1. What type of stories, ooh, this is a tough one. What type of stories can be used with the story arc?
Yeah, I got it.
Good.
Yeah.
All right. 4 or 6. 6. Why is it essential to create the story arc with your students? And if you were with our training earlier this morning, this is easy also.
Ownership.
Ownership.
Yeah.
Keep them engaged.
Mhm.
Model.
Wow.
Good. Visual support, sense of ownership, helps retain. Good. All right. Our last question. The story element is identified when the mood changes. What story element? I apologize. What story element?
Got it.
Yay.
Yay.
Nice. All right.
think that's it for.
Yeah, and I think I think the key is absolutely just using it over and over and over with your kiddos so that they have an ownership, so they can do it on their own. So you can literally read them a narrative and they can sit there with a white piece of paper or a whiteboard and they can draw the story arc as they are listening to you. That's when I think you realize, okay.
And they anticipate
Yes.
these elements
Mhm.
once they know them.
Yes, I think you could literally, this could even be an assignment. You could literally take a grade from this. Do you know what I'm saying? Where you're reading and they're having to fill in the different story elements. So, all right, guys, thank you so much.
All right. Are you muted? Yep. Okay. So thank you for joining us today for Story Arc. I am going to put the link in our chat to get you officially paid. You can just click on that link and it should take you to the form for you to fill out, or you can copy and paste it into a web browser and it will open up a browser that you can click on. If for some reason you can't get the link to open, please email me and I will send it to you. Again, thank you for joining us today. We have one more training that we are going to do tomorrow morning from 9 to 10. It is the last one. It is chunking. If you would like to join us and you did not get your invitation yet, please email me and I will send it to you. And I think that's all we have for today. Anything else, ladies?
No.
Ladies?
Thank you. Y'all have a
Okay.
great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow.
I'm going to leave the chat on for just a few more minutes in case you have questions. I will mute all of us. So if you do have something to ask, please type it in the chat because we will not be able to hear you. Okay? You're welcome. Bye, everybody. It's good to see you. One last thing, I did have a lot of people ask about the picture because it was hard to see of the story arc. I am going to take a picture and email it to you, so you will get that picture. Give me just a second.
It was just
Yeah,
a clip from
yeah.
that live right
So
above it.
give me a
And
few
I
minutes and I'll
wanted-
get that
wanted
to
the
you.
chart on.